So we are getting straight to it. It's the Grits and Eggs podcast saying that black men need to be accountable for bad black men's actions. So the good have to be accountable for the bad.
You may not harass women. You may know how to take rejection. The majority of men that most women deal with do not.
Yeah.
As a guy who lived a very social life and who was really outside, I strongly disagree with the majority. But let's keep going.
And you are accountable for that as well. Because I don't got time to figure out which white people are nice, which white people aren't racist, or da 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 da. I have to go on the actions of the group.
Right.
The group as a whole and the history of that group as a whole tells me that they are a danger to me and they are not to be trusted.
Right.
And if you can understand that as a black man and your stance towards white people, then you should absolutely be able to understand women's stance towards you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a war on you waged by women. Actually, the war get a little thicker when we start talking about it from the perspective of a woman and the greater society of racism and white supremacy being waged against black people, and then the patriarchal society being waged against women. So they have to deal with two elements. One of those elements we don't have to think about, and honestly, we're perpetuated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's perpetuated against us young to look at women as objects,
Right.
to look at women only through the lens of a sexual desire and not as the human being that they are.
So Buddy is all over the place. The reason I chose to react to this is mainly because he tried to compare black men dealing with black women to white supremacy. That's what he tried to do. And I thought that was a very poor contrast, especially in the context that he mentioned. So what he said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, what he said was, we as men are accountable for the things that bad men do to women, right? And specifically in this example, he mentioned dudes who are basically hollering at chicks and can't take rejection and, react badly. So for those men that do that, us as the people who aren't, we should be held accountable for that. And the counter example that he used was when it comes to white supremacy, we can't point out which specific bad people, da 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 da. We look at the history of them as a people and just determine, okay, we got to move accordingly based on how these people are, right? And if you could, which is different than accountability, that is different than being held accountable. That determining how you move and how you judge people is different from accountability. Those are two different things. But he said if you can understand that, then you should be able to understand women's stances towards you. Now, I look at dude as a smart dude. I look at him as a intelligent brother. But this is the thing. This is a poorly thought out, because the thing be, cats be on podcasts, they be flowing and glowing and they just be talking. It's probably something he thought about for just a little bit, but he didn't do any critical thinking when he came up with this. So I'm going to break down very quickly white supremacy, just very vaguely how it works and why certain things make us look at the group a certain way. And I'm going to talk about accountability for white individuals. That's what we're going to talk about. Then we're going to go and contrast that to men, because I got to point this out as far as how this is flawed. So white people as a group have systemically oppressed us for generations and for hundreds of years, centuries. So there are different examples of that on a mass scale. We look at something like the Tuskegee syphilis experiments. We look at things like redlining. We look at slavery. We look at COINTELPRO, right? Through the CIA and things like that, government entities. So we are talking about white people really oppressing us through institutions, all right? So follow me with that. These are things that impact masses now let's go a step of black down, people, the ladder rung, and talk about the people. So what are some of the things that white civilians do in mass to where it's like, okay, we could really associate this with your group? What they do is they utilize those power structures. They utilize, the institutions that are oppressing us. Like, for example, I'm going to call the cops just because I don't like you. You haven't done anything wrong, but I know once the cops get here, they're going to have a bias towards me, so I can lie about whatever you didn't do, to get them on your ass and possibly even kill you. You got organizations like the KKK, which is a flat out hate group. A flat out hate group that goes and burns crosses in people's front yards, kills black people, et cetera, et cetera, a lot of genocide, et cetera, et cetera. Those are civilians. That's not a government institution. You know, Hoover and them are, yeah, they was so focused on shutting down the Black Panthers and stuff like that. The KKK still exists. Huey P. Newton went to jail. David Duke is glorified. So in both are civilians, right? Back in the day, you had lynchings. Lynchings were something to where white people never got held accountable. So I could keep going, but those are examples of things that happen. And guess what? The white people who didn't participate in that didn't really oppose it strong enough for it to stop. They did not protest the lynchings. They did not say, no, no, no. When you go and look at those pictures, it's an abundance of white people gathered around like it's a fucking barbecue. It's very sinister. So when you look at that, those are some of the things that white people do in mass or have done in mass. I mean, it could get slicker than that. It could get very passive aggressive, but we're not about to go down a whole spectrum. So when you look at that, let's talk about accountability. When you look at the privilege that white people have, they all benefit from it, right? They all benefit from it. And that privilege is there because of the systemic oppression that has been leveraged against us by powerful racist white people in institutions and things like that. So when you look at that, let's focus on accountability. White institutions like the government specifically, should be responsible for giving us reparations because of the atrocities that happened to our ancestors, for the promises that they made, and also for everything that they've given all the other groups reparations and things like that. And if it has to come out the tax money of everybody else, I don't care if it's Mexicans or whatever, but even white people, who cares? Who cares? Especially as far as white people, they should be held accountable for the atrocities that their ancestors just let happen for hundreds of years. And what that accountability looks like is reparations. Because guess what? Slavery affects all FBA Americans, all foundational black Americans. It affects every single one of us to this day. To this day. It affects white people to this day, because when we talk about white supremacy and racism, that is the foundation. Anti-blackness, that is the foundation right there. It's sewn into the fabric of the country. So to some degree, every white person in existence should be held accountable. And the accountability is twofold. It's just them acknowledging, yeah, what my ancestors did was bad. Yes, what it did, it affects you guys and stuff like that, etc. So verbal accountability, but on top of that, making it right. And reparations is just one way of making it right. So that is something that they should be held accountable for. Now, when we could do a bunch of different examples like that, right? But let's go down to one of the things that I mentioned, lynching. When it comes to lynching, the people who are part of that community and in those pictures, those people should be held accountable. The people who weren't in the pictures, who were living in that same town, were aware of this, didn't call the cops or anything like that, they should be held accountable as safe white people for not opposing that. If the lynching happened in Alabama, and we're just pretending we're in 1952 or something, right? Just so we could get some context. Somebody in Ohio that is white, that has never been, and no lynching has ever happened anywhere near them or in their town. I'm not holding them accountable for that lynching. Let's take another just regular ass example, because this shit is ridiculous. Like the whole notion that like everybody should just be held accountable for every single thing. It lacks the nuance and understanding of how racism and white supremacy work and what accountability should be held on different levels. The woman who said the N-word that was on the panel with Piers Morgan and stuff like that. As far as her saying the N-word, her being racist, she should be held accountable as an individual. People like Tim Pool, who platformed her after that, should be held accountable. I understand Piers Morgan's intentions were good, but platforming that bum-ass bitch was a mistake. Was a mistake. No racist should be platformed, in my opinion. It's very destructive, and he should be held accountable for that. Like, she's not a regular figure. She got famous off of saying the N-word. She's a racist, a self-admitted racist. Why do we need to have conversations with a self-admitted racist? So those are the people who should be held accountable. The people who support her should be held accountable as far as the white people. When we get outside of that, this is one individual in their actions, and it's just words. It's just her saying a racial epithet. People who have nothing to do with it at all, people who not even aware of it, white people who have nothing to do with nothing, should not be held accountable for that woman. That is absolutely ridiculous. Now, if we look at the Terry Schiavo, whatever the chick is name, who called the little boy the N-word, right? They called the little boy the N-word and got away with it. And then you got all these white people. This is where it gets sinister. You got all these white people donating to her GoFundMe and shit like that. And they raised something like $500,000 for this woman because she called a baby the N-word, a child. Being that so many white people donated to her, this is now something bigger than just an individual saying a word to another person and it going viral and people discussing it. No, they're trying to empower that woman financially. So not only do the white people who are giving money to this chick have to be held accountable, the white people who aren't standing against her have to be held accountable. So do you understand how that works? It's circumstantial and it depends on the dynamics of the situation. Who is held accountable when we talk about accountability and white supremacy? If we look at something like black people getting redlined from different communities by banks to where we can't buy homes in certain places, the bank should be held accountable. You know, it's white supremacy, so we are going to put that on white people in general. But as far as white Samantha, who doesn't have anything to do with any of this shit, if she's not in proximity of anything related to a specific incident regarding redlining, she's not going to be held accountable for that. The only thing to where we could point at, we could say that you have a privilege because this is something you never have to worry about. Her acknowledging, yeah, this is not something I don't have to worry about. That's the most accountability that we need from her. The acknowledgement of that and that it is wrong. That's really it, because she has no bearing on the situation. This is not something that you go out and just protest it. No, this is something that has to be proven and companies need to be held accountable for in court. So random white people, they don't have anything to do with this. But again, this is just a thing that we have to highlight when we talk about this. This is me being real. White people are not a monolith, but the things that they, as far as the group, have done throughout history are so evil, we do have to identify them a certain way. We have to say, so if we're having a conversation, your people have done this, your people have done this, because the systemic oppression is absolutely insane. But when we get to what accountability looks like for white people in reference to white supremacy, it is circumstantial. It is circumstantial. It depends on what exactly we are talking about and what part they play in what we're talking about, if any. And in some cases, they really don't have much to do with the shit, if anything. And the most accountability that they have, which is not even really fucking necessary in some cases, is them saying, yeah, that's wrong. Which, if you know white people, it's hard for a lot of them to do that. Bro, it's hard for a lot of them to do that. If you've had some of these conversations, like some cats, it really be hard for anybody adjacent with white supremacy to do that. It'd be hard for them to just admit certain things. That oh man, the Irish was slave. But let me not rant. Let's go over to women. Now, this is the thing. When we look at this situation that he mentioned, it is nonsensical when you compare it to everything that I just mentioned. Because if you take one individual, right? Let's just take one individual and he says, "Hey, sweetheart, can I get, what's your name? Da 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 da." And she say, "Nigga, you smell like French fries." And he say, "Shut up, bitch." "Well, fuck you then, bitch. I'll slap you in the mouth." And he just say all that shit, right? Who should be held accountable in that situation? And we're looking at individuals first. So he should be held accountable, of course. You know, if you on some protect black women shit, which I'm sure he is, any guy who's around who doesn't intervene and stuff like that, you could do whatever version of accountability you want to do on them, even though it's not their situation. Even though the situation might diffuse itself, you know, you got to be motherfucking strong black man, come in, step in, protect black women, all that shit. But even then, look at the reason that the other people would be held accountable for not intervening in a situation. That's it. Not because, oh, since he was rude, we got to project his rudeness on to all of y'all. It's not that. Now let's amplify and multiply this and just say, well, a lot of black men do this. A lot of black men in different situations, or just a lot of men in general, get mad at women for rejection. And we're not even going to talk about how some women harshly reject these dudes and stuff like that. But let's just say that there are a lot of men who can't take rejection and they react crazily. Contrast that with the example that I mentioned earlier about an individual white person saying the N-word, saying nigga. How can an individual that doesn't engage in this activity, that wasn't present for any of this activity, that has nothing to do with this activity, be held accountable for this activity that happens from individuals? And it's not systemic. It's not systemic oppression or anything like that. It's not institutional. It's just happening amongst individuals. We all can sit here and acknowledge a problem. Yes, there are a lot of men who can't take rejection and they need to work on taking rejection better and things like that. Okay, boom. So we start there. Okay, so we can acknowledge that there's a problem. But the question is, what the fuck does that problem have to do with me? Because I don't do this shit. And these are the actions of individuals, not institutions, not powerful entities, but other individuals. Those individuals that do that should be held accountable. Because the thing I'm confused on is, in a situation like that where guys are doing X, Y, Z, what does accountability, what does me taking accountability for another individual's actions look like? Or a bunch of individuals' actions look like? Like, what does that look like when I don't do that thing? Well, let's look at what accountability would look like for an individual that does that thing. What accountability would look like is them actually working on themselves, them going to therapy, them, really figuring out how to hone in on those emotions, them going and dealing with more rejection and practicing taking it without saying nothing, without reacting a certain way, triggering a certain thought process and stuff like that, or even just completely avoid approaching women altogether, whatever the case may be. And then also those women that they reacted horribly to, possibly going and apologizing to them for their actions. So now let's go back to me or individuals who don't do this. So we about to get therapy for some shit we don't do. We about to work on ourselves for something we already got on under control. And on top of that, are we going to go and apologize to women for other men's actions? I'm sorry that nigga called you a bitch, at the club that I wasn't at 2 weeks ago. I'm going to work on myself so that I never become like that nigga that I'm not. It just don't make fucking sense. But that's the thing that he chose to lean into and say it off of was, oh yeah, it's a lot of men, or the majority of men. That's what he said. The majority of men, can't take rejection when approaching women. So you got to be held accountable for that. That's not a systemic issue, bro. That's not a systemic issue. That is not a few people at the top of a power structure doing something to a mass of people, and it benefits a whole other set of people as far as the masses. It's not anywhere in the same realm. And that's how come white people get held accountable for things like slavery. And you heard the redlining example. I said Susie and Samantha, who have no proximity to it, they can't really be held too accountable, even though they benefit from it. We could say, oh, you're privileged and stuff like that. But this is what actual accountability in that situation looks like. Suing Wells Fargo. You hear me mention this all the time. Wells Fargo was redlining recently. That's some old shit where people was doing in the 1930s, 40s, 50s and stuff like that, trying to, construct these poverty neighborhoods and just keep all the black people in one area. We thought that was dead, right? Because, oh, racism is done. Oh, what oppression happens to black people now? That right there. That was 2022. That lawsuit is still going on today, right now. So that's what accountability looks like. Now, what he talked about a little later was two things. The first thing is, that shaping how we look at white people, right? So that's one point. White supremacy and a lot of the things that they have done shapes how we look at white people. That is valid. So women having a bunch of guys, let's just pretend we got an individual woman or a bunch of women. They deal with a lot of guys who can't deal with rejection and it makes them look at men a certain way. That is valid. That's valid. But that is completely different than accountability. That's a completely different thing. And there are completely different things and dynamics going on as far as why white people have to be held accountable to some degree for certain things. Even when we look at reparations, the way to reparations is through them. Through them, you have so many white civilians who give so much pushback and shit like that. There are no reparations for women as far as, anything that has gone on with black men and black. There's no reparation. Like, what the fuck is we talking about? So when we get past that, we go to the last thing that he mentioned, which was the patriarchy and shit like that. When we talk about, because I don't know if he was saying this about just black men and black women. I don't think he ever mentioned the words black women. I'm not going back to the clip. But he talks about black people for the most part. When you look at patriarchy, man, I'm going to keep it so real. Patriarchy to black men is similar, but not the same. It's feminism to black women. Black women don't really benefit from feminism. The difference is they choose to engage in that. Patriarchy is not something to where we just say, oh yeah, I'm going to be patriarchal today and just, no. I'm not getting into no deep patriarchy stuff, but when it comes to the black man, it's not like we just have favor in society and we're running shit and we're at the helm of every, no, that's white men. Black men get discriminated against too much to be patriarchal. You even look at the whole shit where women is getting on podcasts saying we the new niggas now, we making the money and I don't want to, I'm not doing 50-50 and all this stuff. And you look at the economy and all that shit and all the black men ain't providers. What patriarchy is going on over here in the black community? What patriarchy? Like what patriarchy is going on in the black community to where it's like we got to just look at all men and just look at them as da-da-da-da-da. Like what patriarchy is going on post-feminism in the black community? It's none. Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. I'll try and keep it light for the rest of the video because I just gave y'all a 20-pack.
And when you understand how to deal with women on a human level, you understand how much women will enrich your life.
What I would love for people like him to do is when they say that, please immediately go into the ways that they can enrich your life, please. Because I can sit here and tell you, my perspective as far as the value of women and things like that. But when you have nonsensical takes like the ones he's had and it's clear that he's in pander mode, I just want to see like how do they enrich your life? Please tell me. Don't try and insult me. Don't try and shame me. It's, oh man, you must have never had. No. Just go straight into how they enrich your life. Please just go straight into it. Don't bullshit. Please just go straight into it. Go down a whole list, please. Just for me. Just go down a whole list of how they enrich your life.
Amen. Amen.
You want to turn it up a notch?
Yeah.
Get you a good woman get you a good black woman in your corner.
Amen.
Hey man, you want to see your life turn up?
Hey.
And see, this is the thing, though. It's a privilege, bro. It's a privilege. You know what I'm saying? We often disregard the power of our black women. The spiritual essence that they're gonna bring to things, the knowing, the seeing. You know what I'm saying? Also, too, imagine it. They have to be hyper vigilant because they have to be constantly scanning the room, making sure that they're in a safe situation.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm not even going to address the spiritual essence thing too much. The thing about women, black women, white women, it don't matter. You have to know, number one, what type of spirit they have to some extent, and number two, what their alignment is. Some dudes, you'll be with a whole witch or a hoodoo master, whatever you want to call it, like somebody who does the dark arts and stuff, like all of that shit. And some of y'all won't have no idea. Some of y'all won't have no clue who you dealing with or what you're dealing with. Especially if you don't have any spiritual background, if nobody ever gave you that as a kid to any degree. Like you just gonna look at it like, oh, I'm not superstitious. So that's a prerequisite. You know what's funny? My dude hit me and he asked me, yo, if you was to cuff a chick right now, she ain't got no kids or nothing like that, or whatever the case may be, or she got one kid. You know, what would be the circumstances? What would have to be there, you know, for you to cuff her? One of the things I said, you know, certain stipulations as far as a kid, that's kind of dicey. So just to keep it simple, I said no kids. I said a bunch of other stuff that I won't get into because of time. But one of the things that I did mention is I got to know her religious alignment. If it's with an Abrahamic religion, we could work. If it's with an Abrahamic religion, we could work. If it's some African stuff, like, it depends on what it is because I don't know that stuff, right? If you want some like, I don't even want to say no names or nothing like that to get it wrong or anything like that. But if you into witchcraft or something like that, if you into loose spirituality, crystals and all of that, I'm not fucking with that. I'm not fucking with that. You lost. You lost. But I told him her religion matters. So that's one thing that we put out there, right? As one of my requirements. And you could say I'm not woke enough for saying Abrahamic religion and I didn't say nothing in alignment with Egypt, you know. But it is what it is when it comes to that. But outside of that, I can agree to some extent. It depends on the woman. But yeah, it's possible for them to bring something as far as a good spiritual essence to your life. It's possible. When we get past that, because I said I wasn't going to go deep on that and I still went kind of deep. The other thing that he mentioned was them scanning for threats and stuff like that. Now, this is true when they have kids, for sure. Because I've been in situations where my mom has peeped certain things that I didn't peep as a child and stuff like that. They probably are like this to some degree, like, you know, themselves when they go to the clubs and stuff like that or whatever the case may be. Some, like, you know, they got to be cautious. But even then, the thing about that is that's just an extra set of eyes, for me at least. I feel like as a guy, you should be on top of your game. You should be not just on top of your game, but you should be scanning different situations, just like whenever you out and just look at certain things and just, you know, have a sense of awareness when it comes to potential dangers and things like that. That's how come they say we supposed to sit facing the door. You know, when we go into restaurants and things of that nature, little social constructs that we have. We got to walk on the outside of the sidewalk. They supposed to walk on it inside, you know, just in case that's confusing. Whatever side is towards the road, that's the side we supposed to be walking on and shit like that. So we are the protectors and we still, like, if you're the protector, you got to look to protect. You got to really be on point yourself. So they just an extra set of eyes. I'm somebody that's kind of paranoid, so I be on point. I be very, 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 very on point. And the thing is, I'm talking about me. I'll be honest with you. I don't think most men are. That's just me keeping it real for this moment, because when I look at certain things, for example, I've never been in the streets. Let me keep it a G with y'all. But when I look at and I hear different street situations about how comfortable dudes be around other dangerous dudes and either get done dirty as far as getting robbed or worse, it'd be like, I don't know why y'all be so trusting with so many different dangerous individuals and stuff like that. One of my people told me something that'll stick with me for the rest of my life. He said, you know, if I feel like I have to bring a gun to the place that I'm going, like if I feel like it's mandatory that I have the gun in that place, I'm not going. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't go to Costco or fucking Sam's Club or wherever with his gun. What it means is if he feels like, yo, it's no way I could go to this place without a gun. I would not be safe without a gun. I'm not going to that place. Yeah. That stuck with me, and I pretty much live by the same principles to some degree. Now, remember, he talked about enriching your life and stuff like that. I don't look at those two things that he mentioned as big factors, like just, oh, my life is so enriched because I got this spiritual woman who is cautious and alert. That I don't look at that as life enriching in so much. I just don't. I'm not going to get too deep with the spiritual. All I'm going to say is you got to be right yourself. You got to get right yourself. Period, point blank. Let's continue.
Saying, when we think about these kids who were clearly in Louisiana having the time of their fucking life because they graduated, and we think about white people's reaction to Black Joy.
Oh yeah, that's
it's not about civility. It's not about decorum. They don't like to see us happy.
that's what it is.
Now, how often are women just having a good time, and here come a nigga trying to ruin their fun?
Yeah.
Let's just be honest.
He really just talking, man. Like, like this doesn't happen. Like, we react to all types of stuff in this space, and we never see nothing where women are just minding their own business, enjoying themselves, and somebody comes in as far as a guy just with the intention, they don't like seeing them happy, and they just come in to ruin it. They just come in to ruin it. No, if a guy's going in, he's probably going in to approach and try and get at somebody. But the thing is, this is the whole thing about his whole premise that don't make sense to me. It's like, oh man, because you know some men can't take rejection. We are in a approach drought right now. There's so many women online. There's so many statistics and surveys taken. So many women getting on TikTok like, oh man, I be going out, I don't get approached by nobody. So now we're gonna sit here and act like there's a huge, tremendous problem where there is a abundance of men just approaching women and just being really nasty and mean. During an approach drought, that's what we're going to act like. During an approach drought, we're going to act like that's the case. Okay. All right. So we just saying anything for the pot right now.
You can call it pandering, but if I was up here caping for white women, you wouldn't even mention that word. If I was up here caping for Hispanic women, you wouldn't even call it pandering. Only when we take pride and show love to Black women do you call it pandering. Get your motherfucking mind right. Use your cabeza.
Let's address that really quickly first. So if you were saying this about Latino women or white women, right? If you was uplifting them, you would be RG3. You would be somebody like a RG3 or any other type of figure like that, which we've seen what happened with him recently. He's been getting slammed online for having a white wife. Ryan Clark weaponized his white wife against him. Black people were trying to act like it wasn't an attack. And he's just been getting shitted on all over the internet by Black women and pandering Black men. He's been getting called a buck dancing coon and, he playing in the snow and all of these things, right? All of these things. So, yeah, nobody would say you pandering. You would get called a coon. It would be a different word for you in that context. Now, let's go to him saying that nobody mentions pandering when white women or any other demographic of women are mentioned. The thing about this, because I thought about this before I even did the video. And even before I did the video, I've said this in other videos. This is a question for you. I got a twofold question. Who is the white Steve Harvey? Who is the white man who has made an equivalent book to Think Like a Man? Now, you could pause. You could try and figure that out. Don't pause too long because there's no equivalent. There's no equivalent. When you think of the white person who's like that, right? When you think of a white person that's like that, they're not going to be anywhere in the same realm of fame as Steve Harvey. Let's go down a rung down the ladder. Who is the white Derrick Jaxn? You want to know what's funny? I found him on a channel a few videos ago. The white Derrick Jaxn is Eric Brian Stone. And guess what? He panders to black women. He doesn't even pander to white women, which brings me to my next point. Not only can you not find a white guy who is just pandering to women in general and just building a whole following and mass clout, like the only person I could think of is who is that dude? Russell Brand. He's the only person I can think of that openly panders to women, not by race, but just panders to women in general, and is white. Doesn't specify black women or anything like that. Can't think of anybody Caucasian, that's in the pandering game and has something like, Derrick Jaxn or anything like that. And this is the issue. Women in general are insecure. Women in general love to be pandered to. But when you go to black women, there is a whole extra set of layers of insecurity that white women just don't have because of systemic racism. Let me just keep it real. Because of beauty standards and things like that. They don't live up to the European beauty standard that has been set in the nation and stuff. All the slavery trauma, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not going to go that deep. But listen, they have an extra bag of shit going on. They have an extra bag of shit going on. The whole colorism thing, you'll hear white women don't be online talking about colorism. Light-skinned women are insecure. Dark-skinned women are insecure. So when you get into it, black women have an extra cake layer, like a few cake layers, like a wedding cake of insecurities. So when it comes to pandering, they are by far the most susceptible to pandering because of the level of insecurity that a lot of them have. And the thing about all of these guys, as far as the panderers, they are grifters, right? They are grifters. So they're exploiting these women's insecurities. So that is why you see the pandering stuff happen with black women way more than any other demographic of women, because if a guy like Russell Brand is pandering, he's just going to pander to women in general. But when it comes to black women, once you start to put the black label on different shit, you were tapping into something extra. Like, black women are so susceptible to the shit that a white guy like Eric Brian Stone can build a whole following off pandering to black women is an awkward, weird white guy that they would never date or fuck.
I don't care if it's getting lost on you. I don't care about being called. I don't care. Simp, panderer, don't matter. Accountability in 5. Here's the thing. Doctors, lawyers, politicians, entrepreneurs, young academics, educators, astrophysicists, media personalities, they all support the Grits and Eggs podcast. So I don't care what the dark serpent Osiris son, the god.
Ooh, son. What's his name?
Third Eye Osiris, the Serpent King. Niggas with names like that.
Yeah.
I have some empathy towards the red pill community. But I have a question for the red pill community too. Where are your scholars? Because there's never been an articulation about what they disagree with. It's just that I don't agree. I don't have to be accountable for other men's actions. We'll get to that in a second.
Now, I want you to know that was a follow-up episode, a clip from a follow-up episode, but which I'm not about to watch the whole thing. And the thing that he probably doesn't recognize is that people in TikTok comments, the characters are limited. So if he's reading his TikTok comments, it's not going to be a full-blown explanation. Now, him asking who your scholars are, I didn't get that at first because I'm like, I don't get the point. Like, what scholars that listen to us or whatever the case. But he said something after that. I'll just say this, we got Andrew Wilson as far as the red pill space. You got and he's a very highly intelligent dude. I don't think he has any academic degrees or nothing like that. You got Jordan Peterson, a lot of things taken from evolutionary psychologist Dr. David Buss. So it's not like this shit is just rooted in nothing. If that's one of the things that, what's going on in his head, like it's not that this shit is just rooted in nothing. But as far as the second point that he made, nobody articulates why they disagree or anything like that's disingenuous. That's disingenuous. I guarantee you anybody who reacted to this video, as far as him saying all this stuff, they articulated their disagreement, similar to how I went super in depth and articulated my disagreements. Maybe he hasn't watched any of the reactions. Maybe he's just reading comments and not even YouTube comments. I don't know. Maybe people are in his comments just saying I disagree. But to say nobody is articulating their disagreements and just saying I disagree, I know that's a lie. When we talk about the actual reactors on YouTube, I know that's a lie. So it's like we just into some bad face shit right now. Like, it can't just be saying anything. The dude is very smart. I like a lot of his other takes and stuff like that. I'm not going to critique him too much outside of that. Like, that's basically it. But as far as like this is the worst shit I've ever seen him put out. The worst pack of shit I've ever seen him put out. From the second podcast clip at the end that I just went over and that whole podcast clip that I brought, this is the worst shit I ever seen him put out, and I expect worse in the future, because if pandering is an angle you're going to take, there's going to be more pandering in the future, man. What episode is it? 67? Man, by 90, he'll be pandering again, talking about man should be. He'll say something else to shake up the internet and get a bunch of reactions and stuff like that, because that's what the game is. The podcast shit is about attention, man. If you came on and gave the same boring sermon and just like, you just talking and, oh man, and it's nothing groundbreaking. Yeah, you'll have your audience and it'll be cool. Like how I got my audience and it's cool, but I do long form content. I don't expect to have anything just blow. I don't expect to just blow up. Oh man, because we're in a time frame where short-term content is king. Not short-term, but short-form content is king. So if you can get your point across in 15, if you could be entertaining in 15 to 30 seconds, you are golden. The most you have is a minute. And if you could get your reels, your shorts, your TikToks and all that, bruh, you good. And that's what he's doing with his podcast. Like I see his podcast is all over TikTok. That's where people go to consume a lot of the stuff that he puts out. I'm not saying his podcast don't got no motion. It does. But that's where we know him from, TikTok, him clipping up his podcast. I'm not doing clips. I don't have clips of, this shit that I'm doing right now. Shout out to Angry Man. Angry Man and the whatever podcast and Fresh and Fit. And like, they really killing the clip game when it comes to this shit, right? Most Manosphere content creators are not. They're just not. And if you're doing short form content, as far as like the 60 seconds you have to make those clips potent so that they go viral. You have to make them potent. You have to pack a punch. You have to click farm. You have to, just really get them and push those emotional buttons. And that's what he did with this clip. So by episode 90, episode 100, he's going to be talking about women again. He's going to be saying something that is going to piss off the red pill community or just men in general again. Like, so that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. That don't mean his podcast ain't good. That don't mean he don't got some value, but just understand the game for what it is, man. He got a mic set up. He in front of them mics. He clipping shit up. You're not about to be doing this shit and not try to put your best foot forward. So that's what it is. Let me know your thoughts. I'm gone.